The snowflakes fell in a frantic, almost desperate dance outside the penthouse window, each flake a tiny, frozen whisper against the glass. Inside, the silence was thicker, heavier. Xander Sterling, CEO of Sterling and Company, the undisputed titan of Wall Street, stood with his back to the panoramic view of Manhattan, his gaze fixed on the mahogany desk. His jaw was set, a muscle ticking beneath his sharp, chiseled cheekbone. This wasn't the calm, calculated demeanor that struck fear into competitors. This was a man cornered. Across from him, perfectly poised, was Maya Jenkins, his executive assistant. Her hands were clasped neatly in her lap, her usually serene expression now etched with a subtle, professional concern. "So, that's it then?" Xander's voice was low, laced with a rare tremor of defeat. "My sister, Eleanor, has chosen Aspen for Christmas this year. And she insists that I bring someone." He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed dark hair, the gesture betraying a flicker of desperation. "Not just someone, Maya. She's threatened to set me up with every eligible, ambitious heiress in the Rockies if I arrive alone." Again, Maya's lips thinned. Eleanor Sterling's meddling was legendary, a force of nature even Xander, with all his billions and influence, couldn't fully control. Especially not during the holidays, when family expectations amplified to unbearable levels. Xander was a man whose life was spreadsheets and mergers, not heartfelt conversations or festive cheer. His romantic life, if one could call it that, was as sterile and predictable as a quarterly earnings report, non-existent. "And your usual strategy?" Maya asked, her voice calm, a soothing counterpoint to the storm brewing in his eyes. "A sudden, urgent business trip to Tokyo, perhaps?" "Already tried that." "She knows my urgent business trip routine by heart," he sighed, dropping into the opulent leather chair, suddenly looking less like a CEO and more like a weary soldier. "This year, she's dug in. Bring a girlfriend, Xander, or bring a fiancé. Just bring someone who isn't a stock report." He grimaced. "And she expects me in Aspen in 3 days." A beat of silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant wail of a New York siren. Maya's mind raced, sifting through options, probabilities, and potential solutions, a skill she had hoped to perfection during her 3 years as his assistant. But this wasn't a spreadsheet error. This was a personal crisis of monumental, festive proportions. Xander looked up. His piercing blue eyes, usually cold and analytical, now held a glint of something akin to panic. "Maya," he said, his voice softer, almost pleading. "You're the only person who understands the intricate web of my family, the demands of my schedule, and the sheer impossibility of finding a suitable date in less than 72 hours for a week-long Christmas trip to Aspen." He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto hers. "I need a solution. A convincing, temporary, and utterly discreet solution. Someone who can play the part." Maya swallowed, a sudden, inexplicable flutter in her stomach. The snow continued its relentless descent, painting the city in a deceptive blanket of purity. She knew exactly what he was going to ask. And she knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified her, that she was about to say yes. This wasn't just another task. This was an assignment that would blur every professional line she had meticulously drawn. The fake dating romance had just begun. Maya Jenkins was the epitome of organized chaos, a living, breathing algorithm in designer suits. At 28, she had carved out an indispensable niche as Xander Sterling's executive assistant, navigating his demanding schedules, anticipating his needs, and managing his vast empire of contacts with the precision of a Swiss watch. Her own life, however, was a quiet, almost deliberately understated affair. Weekends were for cozying up with a classic novel, exploring hidden art galleries, or volunteering at a local animal shelter. Romance was a concept she admired in fiction, a whimsical indulgence she hadn't found time for in her ambitious real life. Xander Sterling, 35, was a force of nature. A self-made billionaire, he had inherited a fledgling investment firm from his conservative father and, within a decade, transformed Sterling and Company into a Wall Street billionaire romance powerhouse. He was ruthless in the boardroom, brilliant in his strategies, and utterly oblivious to the social nuances of everyday life. Women orbited him, drawn by his power and enigmatic charm, but none ever seemed to penetrate the carefully constructed fortress around his heart. His relationships were fleeting, often strategic, and never extended to family gatherings. This was the man who now looked at Maya, not as an assistant, but as his unlikely savior. "Maya, I need you to be my girlfriend for a week," Xander stated, cutting straight to the chase, his blue eyes betraying a hint of unease. "My fake dating romance plan. It's for Eleanor's Christmas party in Aspen. Just play the part. We'll establish a backstory, a plausible narrative for our relationship before we leave." Maya felt a peculiar mix of shock and a strange thrill. "Mr. Sterling," she began, her voice steady despite her racing pulse, "with all due respect, that's highly unprofessional." "Anne, I'm your assistant." "Precisely why it works," he countered, a rare, almost predatory grin touching his lips. "You know me better than anyone. You understand the demands of my world. And more importantly, you know exactly how to manage expectations, especially Eleanor's. Besides, it's only for a week. A romantic Christmas trip to Aspen. Think of it as a highly unconventional business trip. With a generous bonus, of course." The generous bonus was tempting, yes, but it wasn't the primary driver. Maya found herself intrigued by the sheer audacity of the idea, and perhaps a small, hidden part of her yearned for a taste of the glamorous life, even if it was just an act. Aspen, lavish Christmas parties, a billionaire CEO on her arm. It was the stuff of the Christmas romance movie she secretly adored. Over the next 2 days, their New York penthouse office transformed into a strategy room for their fabricated relationship. They created a backstory, a whirlwind, secret romance that began discreetly after a late-night work project, blossomed over a shared love for obscure literature, Maya's choice, and was kept under wraps due to their professional positions. It was a flimsy premise, but Xander's family was notoriously busy and perhaps too self-absorbed to scrutinize it too closely. Xander, ever the pragmatist, even scheduled a relationship boot camp. This involved watching classic rom-coms, much to his visible discomfort, practicing holding hands across the boardroom table, and developing a believable level of casual intimacy. Maya found herself laughing more than she had in months, observing Xander's awkward attempts at romantic gestures. It was during one of these practice dates, a decidedly unromantic power lunch where they had to pretend to flirt over economic forecasts, that Maya felt a subtle shift. A brief brush of his hand as he reached for a water glass, a lingering gaze that held more than just professional analysis. The lines between boss and assistant, between professional and personal, began to blur in ways she hadn't anticipated. The day of departure arrived, a flurry of private jets, luxury luggage, and the biting cold of a New York winter. As they boarded the sleek, private jet destined for the Aspen Christmas getaway, Maya, dressed in a stylish cashmere travel outfit Xander's personal shopper had insisted upon, looked out at the city skyline. This was it. The start of their holiday fake girlfriend charade. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for a week of pretending, of acting out a dream she hadn't known she harbored. She was Xander Sterling's assistant, yes, but for the next 7 days, she would be his fake dating romance partner, immersed in the luxurious, exclusive world of an Aspen Christmas getaway. And in the back of her mind, a tiny, unbidden thought stirred. What if, just what if, some part of this elaborate life felt real? The office romance tropes were now her reality. Aspen welcomed them with a dazzling display of pristine white slopes and twinkling fairy lights, a scene plucked straight from a holiday postcard. Xander's family estate, the Sterling Summit, was a sprawling chalet that blended rustic charm with undeniable opulence. Eleanor, a woman whose warmth was as legendary as her meddling, greeted them with an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked the wind out of Maya. "Xander, darling. And this must be the elusive Maya," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with curiosity as she thoroughly appraised Maya. Maya managed a graceful smile, acutely aware of Xander's hand subtly resting on the small of her back, a practiced gesture, yet one that sent a surprising warmth through her. The first few days in Aspen were a whirlwind of lavish parties, exclusive ski runs, and intimate family dinners. Playing the part of Xander's girlfriend was far more challenging and emotionally taxing than Maya had anticipated. She had to master the delicate balance of being affectionate without being overly familiar, of listening intently to Xander's family anecdotes as if she genuinely knew the history, and of deflecting Eleanor's increasingly pointed questions about their secret romance. Xander, to his credit, was a surprisingly convincing partner. He remembered their fabricated backstory details, offered Maya his hand on icy paths, and even managed a few genuine-looking smiles when she made him laugh. These weren't the cold, calculated expressions of the boardroom, they were softer, more relaxed. One afternoon, while sitting by a roaring fireplace, listening to Xander's younger cousin, Liam, recount a childhood prank, Xander's hand found Maya's under a tartan blanket. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, a small, comforting gesture that felt entirely unscripted. Maya's heart fluttered, and she had to remind herself, it's all part of the act. Yet, the warmth of his touch lingered long after he removed his hand. The primary conflict, however, wasn't just maintaining the facade, it was the growing confusion of their own feelings. Maya found herself increasingly drawn to the Aspen Xander, the man who shed his Wall Street armor to playfully jostle with his nephews in the snow, who spoke with unexpected passion about his late father's legacy, and who, one evening, found her alone admiring the Christmas tree and confessed, "This is harder than closing a multi-billion-dollar deal, isn't it?" His vulnerability, a stark contrast to his usual imperviousness, was disarming. A significant challenge arose with Vivian Thorne, Xander's ex-fiancée, who unexpectedly appeared at a gala dinner. Vivian was a stunning socialite with sharp wit and an even sharper competitive edge. She had clearly not moved on from Xander and immediately sensed the artificiality in his and Maya's dynamic. Maya, darling, a sterling and company assistant, how convenient, Vivian purred, her eyes raking over Maya with thinly veiled disdain. She launched into stories of her and Xander's past romantic Christmas trips, subtly trying to expose the gaps in Maya's knowledge. Maya held her ground, guided by Xander's reassuring presence beside her, but the encounter left her shaken. The pressure to maintain their fake dating romance escalated dramatically. Xander, observing Vivian's attempts to undermine them, became even more protective of Maya. He would often intercept Vivian, guiding Maya away with a possessive hand, or interject with fabricated details of their shared experiences that left Vivian frustrated. This protective instinct, though part of the charade, felt incredibly real to Maya. It was during a private moment after the gala, standing on the balcony under a blanket of stars, that Xander looked at her, his expression serious. "Thank you for handling that, Maya. You were brilliant. I owe you." Maya just nodded, but inside, a new and unsettling question formed. Did she want his gratitude, or something more? The boss assistant love story was slowly, subtly, transitioning from a performance to a perilous emotional tightrope walk. They found themselves sharing whispered jokes at stuffy dinners, exchanging knowing glances across crowded rooms, and confiding small, personal details during late-night walks in the snow, talks that had nothing to do with their act. Xander, the man who rarely spoke of his emotions, opened up about the immense pressure of his father's legacy and his deepest fear of failure. Maya, who guarded her private life fiercely, spoke of her dreams of opening her own small art gallery. Each shared moment chipped away at the professional distance, revealing layers of vulnerability and connection they both silently acknowledged. One afternoon, during a supposedly romantic ice skating outing arranged by Eleanor, Maya stumbled. Xander, with surprising speed, caught her, his arms wrapping tightly around her waist. For a fleeting second, they were pressed close, his breath warm against her ear, his strong hands firm around her. Time seemed to stop. She looked up, and his blue eyes, usually so guarded, held a deep, intense gaze that spoke volumes. It wasn't just the practiced act of a caring boyfriend. It was a look filled with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher, but it stirred a profound response within her. He helped her steady, his grip loosening slowly, but the moment hung heavy between them. Later that evening, the tension between them was palpable. Xander was unusually quiet during dinner, his gaze frequently drifting to Maya. She, in turn, found herself acutely aware of his every move, every subtle shift in his demeanor. The unexpected love story was brewing beneath the surface of their elaborate lie, threatening to erupt and expose their carefully constructed facade. The longer they pretended, the harder it became to distinguish the act from their burgeoning reality. The proximity, the shared vulnerability, the unspoken glances all were deepening a connection that was no longer purely professional. The holiday fake girlfriend was starting to feel real. The climax of their charade arrived with the annual Sterling and Company Christmas Ball, the most exclusive event of the Aspen season. Eleanor had outdone herself, transforming the chalet into a winter wonderland of crystal, velvet, and a dizzying array of Wall Street's elite. The pressure on Xander and Maya was immense. Not only would Vivian Thorne be present, but Xander's formidable grandfather, Arthur Sterling, the patriarch who ruled the family with an iron will, would also be scrutinizing their every move. Arthur had never approved of Xander's fleeting relationships, demanding stability and a suitable partner for the Sterling heir. As Maya descended the grand staircase in a breathtaking emerald gown Xander had insisted she wear, all eyes turned to her. Xander, impeccably handsome in a tailored tuxedo, was waiting at the bottom. He offered her his arm, his touch firm and reassuring. His eyes, however, held a new, unreadable intensity. The air crackled with anticipation, and Maya felt a knot of dread mingled with an undeniable excitement. The evening began with forced smiles and practiced banter, but Vivian Thorne was relentless. She cornered Maya by the champagne fountain, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "So, Maya, tell me, how long has this arrangement been going on? Because last I checked, Xander prefers his women to have a bit more pedigree." Maya's blood ran cold. Vivian was not just questioning their relationship, she was attacking Maya's professional standing and hinting at the transactional nature of her presence. Just as Maya composed herself to deliver a cutting but polite retort, Xander appeared, his expression like thunder. "Vivian," he interjected, his voice low and dangerous, "Maya's pedigree is her intelligence, her integrity, and her unwavering loyalty. Qualities I value far more than a name on a trust fund." He put a possessive arm around Maya's waist, pulling her closer. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a dance to catch." The public display of loyalty was both a relief and a terrifying validation for Maya. It felt profoundly real. Later, while dancing, Xander pulled Maya into the quiet solitude of a hidden alcove. His gaze was intense. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. She had no right. "And for the record, I meant every word. Your integrity, Maya, is one of your strongest assets." Maya's heart pounded. This wasn't just playing the part. This was Xander defending her, not just the lie. In that moment, the lines between their fake dating romance shattered for Maya. She was falling for him. Truly, irrevocably falling. The true turning point, however, came with Arthur Sterling. He summoned Xander and Maya to his private study, a formidable room filled with old books and stern portraits. "Xander," Arthur's voice boomed, "Eleanor tells me you've finally found a suitable partner. A working woman. Intriguing." He fixed Maya with a piercing stare. "Tell me, young lady, what are your intentions with my grandson?" Maya froze. The moment of truth. Xander squeezed her hand subtly, a silent plea for her to maintain the facade. But looking into Arthur's unwavering eyes, Maya knew she couldn't lie any longer, not truly. The feelings blooming in her heart were too real to be reduced to a convenient fiction. "Mr. Sterling," Maya began, her voice trembling slightly but firming with conviction, "my intentions are to support Xander, as I always have, and to wish him happiness, whatever form that takes." She deliberately kept her answer vague, truthful to her emerging emotions, yet still protecting Xander from immediate exposure. Arthur observed them both, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He turned to Xander. "Happiness, Xander, is not found in balance sheets. Is this woman capable of bringing you that?" Xander looked at Maya. His blue eyes, which had always held a facade of control, were now raw, vulnerable. In that critical moment, the weight of the lie, the expectations, and his undeniable, growing feelings for Maya crashed down on him. He saw her, not as his assistant, not as his holiday fake girlfriend, but as the woman who had brought unexpected warmth and laughter into his rigid life. He saw the genuine care in her eyes, the quiet strength that had weathered his demanding world, and the silent plea for honesty. Taking a deep breath, Xander made his decision. "Grandfather," he said, his voice firm, clearing the air of all pretense, "Maya is more than capable. She's the most remarkable woman I've ever met." He turned to Maya, his gaze intensely locking onto hers, ignoring his grandfather's raised eyebrow. "And my intentions, Maya," he confessed, his voice dropping to a near whisper, audible only to her, "are real. My feelings for you are anything but fake." The confession hung in the air, a bombshell in the carefully controlled environment of Arthur Sterling's study. Maya's breath hitched. His words, so utterly genuine, were a revelation. Arthur Sterling, surprisingly, leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Well," he mused, "it seems Eleanor's meddling has, for once, produced something genuine. Now, about that Wall Street billionaire romance. Is it strong enough to face the real world?" Xander, his eyes still fixed on Maya, nodded. The game was up, the truth was out. The boss-assistant love story was no longer a performance, it was a burgeoning reality, forged in the crucible of a fake dating romance in Aspen. The romantic Christmas trip had ignited something undeniably real. The revelation in Arthur Sterling's study sent ripples through the remaining days in Aspen. Eleanor, delighted by the genuine confession and her perceived matchmaking success, became even more enthusiastic, orchestrating couple activities with renewed vigor. Vivian Thorne, seeing Xander's unwavering commitment and the undeniable warmth between him and Maya, retreated in a huff, her defeat a quiet victory. But for Xander and Maya, the external validation was secondary to the internal earthquake their confession had triggered. The facade was gone, replaced by the thrilling, terrifying reality of their raw, exposed feelings. Their first real date, without the pretense, happened on Christmas Eve. Xander, shedding his CEO persona entirely, took Maya on a quiet, moonlit sleigh ride through the snow-covered Aspen woods. The jingle of bells, the crisp winter air, and the silent beauty of the landscape provided a stark contrast to the high-stakes world they usually inhabited. He confessed his feelings, detailing how her calm competence had slowly chipped away at his cynicism, how her quiet humor had brought genuine joy into his life, and how the fear of disappointing his family had inadvertently led him to the one person who truly understood him. "I didn't realize until Aspen," he admitted, pulling her closer under the thick blanket, "that I wasn't just pretending to be in love with my assistant. I was actually falling." Maya, her heart full, admitted her own journey, the initial intrigue, the growing respect, and the quiet, persistent flutter in her chest whenever he looked at her. She spoke of his unexpected kindness, his vulnerability beneath the polished exterior, and how she'd seen past the Wall Street titan to the man underneath. "I always thought you were a force of nature, Xander," she whispered, "but I never expected to find the warmth beneath the storm." Their kisses under the starlit sky were no longer part of an act. They were demayations of a burgeoning, undeniable love. The unexpected love story was officially written. The return to New York was a different kind of challenge. Back in their usual environment, the professional boundaries that had dissolved in Aspen loomed large once more. How did a CEO and his assistant navigate a genuine, serious relationship? Xander, ever the strategist, proposed a solution. "Maya," he said one morning in his office, his hand finding hers across the desk, "this can't be an office romance trope that compromises your career or our company. You're too valuable. And too important to me." He then outlined a plan. Maya would transition from her executive assistant role to spearhead a new initiative within Sterling and Company, a venture capital arm focused on #fintech innovation, leveraging her keen organizational skills and deep understanding of the market. This would not only give her a significant promotion and a new, autonomous career path, but also create the necessary professional distance for their relationship to flourish without ethical conflicts. Maya, stunned by his foresight and generosity, was thrilled. This was an opportunity she had only dreamed of, a chance to apply her talents in a leadership role, completely independent of her past duties as his assistant. It was a testament to his belief in her abilities, not just his feelings. Their boss-assistant love story was finding its own unique resolution, transforming from a secret affair into an openly acknowledged partnership, both professionally and personally. Over the next few months, their relationship blossomed. They learned to navigate the public eye, Xander's family, who were genuinely fond of Maya, and the demands of their respective high-powered careers. They found joy in simple things, quiet dinners, walks in Central Park, and planning future romantic Christmas trips that would be entirely their own. Xander, once emotionally guarded, learned to openly express his affection, surprising himself with the depth of his feelings. Maya, once self-contained, allowed herself to fully embrace the happiness and love Xander brought into her life. The final scene of their unexpected love story unfolded a year later, back in Aspen, but this time, there was no pretense. They were standing on the same mountain where their charade had begun, the snow falling gently. Xander, holding Maya close, pulled a small, velvet box from his pocket. "Maya," he began, his voice filled with an emotion that was profound and entirely genuine. "Our story started as a lie, a fake dating romance born out of necessity. But it became the most real, most incredible journey of my life. You taught me that true wealth isn't in stocks or bonds, but in love, laughter, and genuine connection. Will you do me the honor of making this Aspen Christmas getaway a permanent tradition? Will you marry me?" Maya, tears streaming down her face, whispered yes. Her heart swelled with an overwhelming sense of joy and gratitude. The Wall Street billionaire romance wasn't just a fairy tale, it was their reality, born from a desperate lie and culminating in a love that was profoundly, beautifully true. Their journey from a strategic deception to an honest, enduring love was a testament to the unexpected paths life can take, especially during a magical Christmas trip to Aspen. The secret feelings CEO had finally found his heart.